Article has just come in today, or it was written on the 7th of May 2025. Police officers found guilty of misconduct face automatic dismissal. I'm going to keep this as brief as I can, so I'm just going to scan it very quickly and people can read it at their own leisure. Right, rules introduced from the end of May. Oh, that's what struck me when I read it. Okay, so this is why I'm doing, I'm adding my own, because officers will be sacked for gross misconduct unless there are exceptional circumstances. Exceptional circumstances for gross misconduct. Am I the only one that sees a bit of a red flag there? Gross misconduct is gross misconduct, and there's no two ways about it. That behaviour is not acceptable. It should not happen in office, and that is that. We don't want there to be any circumstances, no exceptional circumstances. Gross misconduct is gross misconduct. End of. Full stop. The end. Right. Moving swiftly along. About 500 officers were guilty of gross misconduct, were dismissed or close to leave the service. Official figures from 2023 to 2024. Well, that all depends, because police have the powers to dismiss, so it's all in their judgment, isn't it? This is where this all falls to pieces, and it won't actually be very good. It's flawed, because unless you have an impartial, independent body come in above the police and alongside them to work with them, amongst them and above them, to do this job for them, then it won't be with integrity. Now, when they do dismiss, where do these officers go? Because they are not fit for employment. If they've misused their position of power over the public, interfered with the course of justice and healing and integrity, if they've abused people, children, mainly, if they have abused their position of power and interfered with the course of justice and done untold damage, they should be reprimanded, and they should be reformed, they should be sentenced. But then whoever is employing these people and letting them in should be held to account. So the whoever it is above anyone, the high ranks, whoever employs these people, lets them through the door, are very dangerous criminals. And that interview process is really the doorway to what happens beyond that for the lives of many. That decision, that interview process, should also be done by a governing body above the police, because the police cannot be trusted. They've done untold damage. And this article also says that there's a minority. The majority of officers who are brave and committed to keeping us safe, well, that has not been witnessed. In my opinion, let's just switch that off. In my opinion, so continuing from that, from what I've witnessed throughout the process and what other people seem to be insinuating, it's the majority of officers that are bad eggs. Not the minority, it's the majority. I mean, their conservative apathy, the majority seem to have this narcissism, this apathy and conservative elitism, chauvinism, institutional misogyny that really we don't need. And they need to all go to some kind of military base and be taught how to be human. They need to be rehumanized. We cannot have that. These officers haven't got the first clue about what it means to be a human and what's right and wrong. They are all supporting the apathy, the psychopathy, and encouraging child abuse. They actually don't like children. Nearly every officer that I met throughout the COVID and the years before that, from about 2015 onwards. Before 2015, there was a marked change. Now, whether it was our MP that that changed in 2015, whether it was that we got a new police commissioner, whether it was because we no longer have a police station, we've replaced it with a small room at the back of the library where the public are not permitted. We don't have local officers anymore that are familiar to people. They're all from an emergency response unit from the Eastern Road or somewhere along that way. And they're all kind of bulletproof vests, testosterone, you know, pumped up, not human, not able to relate or deal with society in any acceptable way, and they are detached from that, and that might be good on many levels. They're very good at being an emergency response unit like that, but then that's as far as it should go. Then they shouldn't meddle and write false AI and encourage child abuse, encourage misogyny, and, you know, cover up murders and things like that. They shouldn't be doing any of that. So as an emergency response unit, they actually are good as long as they leave it at that and draw the line. And then we need another set of officers that are totally different. So we need to separate them out. We need to have one that's an emergency response unit. In fact, we need to have different ones. We need to have an emergency response unit that's for armed robberies and serious offences. Then we need to have another response unit that's for domestic situations. And then we need to have another response unit that requires liaison, family liaison, school liaison, and that kind of thing. And that is common sense, and that would then enable a different, a tiered police system. And you might then start to see integrity in the literature, you know, because when you get these 999 call outs, you get armed robbery units coming to deal with minors, you know, who are upset and distressed and whatever. And these people wearing bulletproof vests, testosterone filled, and not with the first clue about how to deal with the situation. And they make it, you know, they're quite violent, and it's quite horrific. And that is, well, you might say that is sometimes called for. It helps that person learn. But when it's not the person's fault, when it's the victim, when they're a victim themselves, and these people are bigging up the perpetrator, you know, and covering things up, that's when it becomes very, very shady. And so we need a tiered policing system that can deal with this in a proper manner. So that's that article. So the officers that are dismissed, they should really go to reforming centres, you know, be turned around, do some community service, you know, go and work on a farm as a labourer, that kind of thing. Do some time inside, you know, where they've probably convicted innocent people serving time that they shouldn't. They should go and do that themselves and see what it's like.